Run, think, shoot, live. The formula of the massively successful and revolutionary game series Half-Life proved the world that a first-person shooter can be more than just a mindless shooting gallery. While it was not the first shooter to attempt to tell a story to be taken seriously, it was the game that managed to impress the masses and change the entire industry. Innovation is a great thing, but during conception it is hard to tell what innovation is here to stay. Can home consoles ever be better than arcades? Is hardware rendering really necessary? What about ray tracing in video games? Development in entertainment media is fast, and a lot of innovations are questioned regarding their viability or cost effectiveness. While not many people found offense to the idea of experiencing stories in games, a whole lot of people found the idea of buying dedicated graphics cards appalling. The current controversial technology being discussed by the masses is not a new technology at all. Virtual and augmented reality has been tried a multitude of times. It failed in the past, so why would it be viable now? There are no games. It is too expensive. The technology is too primitive. The fact of the matter is, virtual reality is evolving at an incredible pace. We have seen improvements in hardware, modes of play, and how VR experiences are made. There are games that attempt to tell a story. Others give the player an opportunity to power themselves out in combat sandboxes, and even others allow the player to puzzle solve and climb towards their goals in virtual worlds. What VR needs is a game that can bring all of those aspects together, to not only form a sandbox playground for a player, but also offer a fully fledged campaign that can be taken seriously. One game that came out recently could very well be the next Half-Life virtual reality desperately needs. Enter Boneworks, an ambitious virtual reality adventure. The game was developed by Stress Level Zero, a development studio that proved to be competent at tackling VR experiences, yet doesn't shy away from implementing game mechanics that are not beginner-friendly. Boneworks is a game with an action emphasis that features a highly interactive and physics-based game world. With that, the game's movement can be extremely off-putting to some players. A simulated virtual body, inverse kinematics, and climbing segments could cause significant nausea and motion sickness. Yet the game was designed around those demanding systems and would not work without them. Boneworks tried to create the most complete VR experience yet, stringing together a multitude of game mechanics packaged into a linear campaign with an engaging story that unfolds in the background. Similar to Half-Life, Boneworks is not only about shooting things. The game combines action with downtime segments, always requiring the player to adapt to what the game throws at them. With puzzle solving, combat and climbing sections, Boneworks differentiated its gameplay quite a bit. Going into the game, you should be aware that this is not only an action game filled with shootouts in a Half-Life-esque game world, but simultaneously an experience that requires the player to overcome challenges that might be more akin to Portal. What is special in this title is the combination of various different gameplay styles into one, and how the player is required to approach the game. Treating the entire game world and the player model itself as a physics object makes for intense action sequences, frightening headset ambushes, and scary climbing segments. In most cases, you can interact with the environment around you, just as you would expect. You can tackle, grab and throw enemies around, you can put objects over their heads to obscure their vision, or might even use a weapon as a tool, more like an extension of your own body. Flipping over a table to provide as cover, hauling yourself over obstacles, or climbing ledges. Most interactions with the game world work exactly as you would think they would. The game requires one thing from you though, and that is a certain level of role-playing. If you try moving a heavy object with one hand in a manner that is inefficient in real life, you can't expect it to work in the virtual world. Objects have weight, and you are expected to treat them as if they had weight. This also applies to melee weapons. You can easily use a one-handed axe with only your right hand, but killing an enemy using a two-handed weapon with just one hand proves to be difficult. Shooting also requires more limitations that make the overall gameplay more engaging. Shooting with only one hand is entirely possible, but compromises your accuracy tremendously. Reloading is kept relatively simple. All you need to do is replace the magazine, load the chamber, and you are good to go. It isn't any more complicated than it needs to be, but still leaves some room for personal preference. Do you want to grab the magazine to eject it, or do you rather slap the magazine out of a gun? There is no right or wrong way. Shooting also is possible in many different ways. Blind fire, hip fire, aim down, sights, and dual wielding are the most common ways I handle shooting in this game. Compared to raw firepower, Boneworks features a wider assortment of bladed and blunt weaponry. Anything from kunais to katanas, hammers to battle axes, two-handed but also one-handed weaponry, which can be gripped, thrown and utilized in more than one way. Any interactable object in your environment could also be used as an improvised weapon. The game can be played in standing, seated or room scale modes, and movement is comprised of physically crouching, virtual crouching controlled by the right analog stick, turning, which can be configured to snap turn or smooth turn, and smooth locomotion, which is achieved by using the left analog stick. Climbing is as simple as grabbing geometry in the level and hauling yourself into a direction you would like to go. Combining the climbing and ducking also enables you to scale geometry quite easily. Similar to moving heavy objects, the game requires you to roleplay to a certain extent to make sure you move efficiently. Think about how you would utilize cover in real life, or how you would climb up a rope. Emulating the actual motions of climbing and ducking not only makes for a more authentic experience, but also makes sure that your virtual limbs don't get stuck on your head or torso. Boneworks features an excellent soundscape. Satisfying gun-related sound effects make shooting and reloading a joy, and using melee weapons to stab, slash, and bludgeon is equally satisfying. The music ranges from melancholic and reserved to energetic and loud. Most of the music features a retro-futuristic feeling, paired with a clearly dystopian sound. Enemies feature unsettling voices and sounds that signal if they spotted you or when they died, and the environments are filled with ambient soundscapes that apply context to your surroundings. The story of Boneworks, similar to Half-Life, is rather simple and straightforward to follow, yet it is handled in a spectacular manner. The story more or less unfolds in the background and serves as a means to an end for the player to progress through the world of Monogon's MythOS. Things seem a bit more sinister than expected, with hints and concerning details scattered throughout the digital world. The story is mainly told through monitors broadcasting video feeds from developers in the real world, communicating with the main protagonist. You can choose to listen to those broadcasts, or decide to ignore them completely. Although well executed, the story does leave a lot of questions unanswered, and might bring up at least one big mystery to dwell on for a player. On the other hand, a good mystery can spark interest in the happenings taking place in the story. So, maybe that isn't such a bad thing in the end. With an engaging campaign, satisfying gameplay, and an enthusiastic development team backing this title, I can strongly suggest Boneworks to any virtual reality enthusiast in need of a new action title that can sink their playtime into. While the gameplay that is on offer might not appeal to players with a weak stomach, and considering that the game mostly offers a multitude of experiences other VR games focus on individually, it is very much worth it to purchase the game for how it packaged those gameplay mechanics together into one of the most complete VR experiences I have had the pleasure to enjoy so far. Stress Level Zero not only brought those gameplay mechanics together, they also improved upon them. Climbing feels much more natural, using melee weapons is very responsive, and using firearms is phenomenal as well. On top of that, I must acknowledge that Boneworks showed to the VR scene how important physicality is in a game. You should be able to use objects in the manner you would want to use them. You should get your hands stuck in geometry if you are not careful enough, and you should be able to manipulate your environment to your advantage. The game has some issues, like the lack of a save and load function that is frankly necessary regarding how long the levels can be. Sometimes your body also gets stuck on geometry, which in many cases is inevitable due to the nature of how the game is supposed to be played. So, the game is entirely worth it, but I would love to compliment Stress Level Zero for one more thing they did: the excellent marketing they conducted for the game. Every video that was presented on the Node and Brandon JLA YouTube channels was representative of what the final game turned out to be. On top of that, they decided to not sell pre-orders of the game and priced the game at a fair $30 price tag. $30 is an amazing price tag, undercutting a whole lot of VR titles in terms of price, but also offering more entertainment value with different game modes and an 8 to 11 hour campaign to play through. So, should you buy Boneworks? If you have prior experience of playing VR titles and you are a fan of action, puzzles and climbing, I would wholeheartedly recommend you to buy this title. Thank you for watching this review for Boneworks. Whether you found this review helpful or not, I would appreciate a rating you would deem appropriate, and if you played the game yourself, I would love to hear in the comment sections what you thought about the game. If you want to donate to my channel and help me make more videos, you can support me on Patreon for behind the scenes posts and progress updates, or support me through a one-time donation on PayPal. Stay tuned for more, and I hope you have a great day.